Okay, gang, really quick before we jump into the video. You may or may not know that I left academia a few years back for broadcasting, but teaching the next generation has and always will be on my heart. I've been broadcasting now through 3 election cycles, and I'm just sick at what the elites have done to our education system. So I decided to step up. My team and I have been working on this for well over a year now. I started a school, and I have absolutely massive plans to take it nationwide. The Worldview Institute of Entrepreneurship and Apprenticeship opens its first location in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on April 9th, and I want to invite you to the ribbon cutting. And I've built a whole amazing event around it, so I want you to come and join me at the Kingdom Builders Experience, April 9th through 11th. You'll get an exclusive invite to the school's ribbon cutting. You'll be invited to a special Scotch and Cigars meetup with yours truly. I'll be lecturing at the school, plus we're hosting a Business Makers Summit where education meets opportunity. Now, seats are limited. Click the link below to learn more, and I can't wait to see you there.
Holy Toledo. Voters' views of the Democrats in Congress among all voters disapprove 68%. And look at the approve number, just 21%, even lower than the Democratic Party at large. This is the lowest on record for Democrats, according to Quinnipiac University polling. You think these numbers are bad? Let's go to this side of the screen. We'll look how Democratic voters feel. Get this. The plurality of Democratic voters disapprove of Democrats in Congress at 49%, and just 40% approve. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Oh, my goodness gracious, you just can't get worse than these numbers.
You can't get worse than these numbers. In other words, things can't get worse for the congressional Democrats. We talked about this in our earlier video today on the analysis of the Wisconsin election. You have to make a distinction between national politics and state politics. So while state Democrats are still able to garner support, Democrats at a national level, particularly congressional Democrats, they are an unmitigated disaster. They're consistently polling at their lowest levels ever, all as the Trump train is just getting started. Greetings, everyone. Happy Liberation Day. That's what the Trump administration is calling today, April 2nd, Liberation Day, as Trump's tariffs are set to go officially into effect. He's marking the occasion later today with a Make America Wealthy Again event at the Rose Garden. Now, as Steve Cortez has rightly pointed out, what's so key with Trump's use of tariffs is that he sees them not so much as negotiation tools or leverage points. Tariffs for Trump are more admission tickets. They're admission tickets to the world's economic box seats. So this is what's so different with Trump's use of tariffs than, say, with our founding fathers' use of tariffs. Remember, historically, tariffs were the primary way our federal government made money, right? Constitutionally, originally, right, as far as our founding fathers are concerned, the federal government was barred from directly taxing citizens. My, how far we've fallen, right? We actually needed a constitutional amendment, the 16th Amendment, for the federal government to be able to institute an income tax. So until then, they had to rely primarily on tariffs. Tariffs and land sales, which took over during the 19th century westward expansion. But tariffs basically were used, well, there were twofold reasons for it. They were used to raise money for the government on the one hand, and they were used to protect American industries on the other. What Trump is doing here is something that's at a whole other level. He is capitalizing on the fact that America has since become the crown jewel of all international consumer bases. And so what he's doing here is he's charging foreign countries a premium for access to that crown jewel. And so what today represents is really a twofold liberation. First and foremost, it's a liberation from the old neoliberal economic international order, where institutions enforcing a one-size-fits-all trade policy, like the IMF and the WTO, are now largely being bypassed for bilateral trade agreements. Up until now, the United States being the architect and enforcer of these post-World War II institutions like the IMF and the WTO, they largely refrained from instituting tariffs to be seen as the international beacon of the ideal of free trade. And that used to drive Donald Trump crazy. He's long been a critic of that neoliberal approach.
What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
So as you can see, Trump has long been a critic of neoliberal economic policies that forego tariffs. And so today marks really the official end of the liberal international economic order that he's always despised. Tariffs are now officially the policy of the United States. But there's another liberation here, and that involves you. This is going to absolutely make your day. But first, gang, in a time when uncertainty dominates the headlines, finding the truth amidst the noise is more important than ever. With competing narratives, algorithm-driven echo chambers, and hidden biases influencing what we see, distinguishing fact from spin has never been more challenging. That's why I turn to Ground News. Ground News gathers news from over 50,000 sources worldwide, and unlike other news platforms, it exposes the spin behind every story, helping you see the full picture. That's why the Ground News app has earned over 10,000 5-star reviews from people who want to stay informed without the bias. See for yourself at ground.news/Steve. Now, one of my favorite features is the blind spot feed. It highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by either the left or the right, helping me get a more complete view of the news. And for every story, Ground News gives you a breakdown of the sources covering it, the bias of the media outlets reporting from the left, center, and right, how reliable those sources have been in the past, and even who owns them. This is the kind of media analysis you're not going to find anywhere else. So right now, my viewers can get this 40% off, 40% off unlimited access to Ground News' Vantage Plan. That's the Vantage Plan I have. Make sure you subscribe using my link at ground.news/Steve. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code when signing up. That's ground.news/Steve.
President Trump pushing ahead with his America First agenda.
Breaking news, Apple announced it's going to work with Foxconn to build a server factory in Texas by 2026.
The company says it is now planning to invest $500 billion in the U.S. economy.
The CEO of SoftBank pledging to invest $100 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years.
This is President Trump delivering on the promise he made to the American people on the campaign trail.
The idea is come to America, build greatness in America, build for the American customers.
Project Stargate. It's a joint venture between SoftBank, Oracle, and OpenAI, and they're going to create a data center that will eventually be expanded.
So as you can see, one way for companies to avoid paying tariffs is relocating their manufacturing plants here in the United States, which contributes inordinately to an expanding job base, particularly among America's working class, where the new voter base of the Trumpian Republican Party. And that's but the tip of the iceberg for how tariffs benefit American citizens. Here's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Tariffs are going to drive America better. Remember, we pay taxes into the Internal Revenue Service. Wouldn't it be amazing to stop paying taxes to the Internal Revenue Service and have the External Revenue Service of Make America Great Again, replace our taxes? That's the goal of Donald Trump, and I think he's going to hit there. He's going to do everything he can to make that happen. Lower our taxes. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on seniors. Come on. This is an amazing country, and we are winning.
So that's the goal. The goal is nothing less than the reduction or the complete elimination of as much federal income tax as possible in proportion to the money that comes in as a result of these new tariffs. That, of course, would be the ultimate liberation. If Trump is able to radically reduce income taxes or even eliminate income taxes for people under a certain income bracket, particularly working class voters, gang, that will secure the dominance of MAGA at the federal level for generations. By contrast, as we saw earlier, for the Democrats, particularly congressional Democrats, things simply could not possibly be worse. As Scott Jennings astutely pointed out, the Democrats officially now have a poll, a CNN poll of all places, numerically reflecting their 80-20 doom loop. They're clocking in at just 21% support. Now, that's about as low as you can get in American politics at this point. And that's because, as we often talk about here, the congressional Democrats are planting their flags on the side of issues that only the most radical fringe Democrats support, right? Illegal migrants over citizens, bureaucrats over taxpayers, criminals over victims, trans athletes over female athletes. They're staking their claim with the most radical 20%. So this is what we call the 80-20 doom loop. The more they stake their claim with the radical fringe 20%, the more they end up alienating themselves from the vast majority, the supermajority of the electorate, and thus decline in popularity. But the more they decline in popularity, the more they feel they have to appeal to their most radical side of their base, which only further alienates them from the majority. So that's the 80-20 doom loop. And what CNN is finding here is that the congressional Democrats have now collapsed in the polls to approval numbers that mirror precisely this doom loop. Only 21% of the most radical fringe voters in our country support congressional Democrats. And given what Cory Booker was just doing in the Senate, I mean, they're being led by absolute lunatics at this point. He filibustered in the Senate. I'm sure you saw this. Which, again, keep in mind, we've been lectured ad nauseum by Democrats. They've been telling us for years now that the filibuster has to be abolished because it's a racist relic from the Jim Crow era. That's what these very same Democrats have been telling us for years now, and now they're using it. Remember, AOC flipped out at Chuck Schumer for not using the filibuster to stop the CR vote a few weeks back, again, after tirelessly calling for its abolition. Now Cory Booker went on a rant that lasted 25 straight hours about literally nothing and for literally nothing. He said nothing, and he said nothing against nothing. He wasn't protesting any vote. He wasn't trying to impede or obstruct any legislation. He just decided to give us 25 hours of performative politics for literally no reason for whatsoever. There's a term that we like to use in our Courageous Conservatives Club. Our members like to refer to the Democrats as devoidists. They are devoidists, and they promote devoidism. They are entirely devoid of any viable national issue today. All the national issues that voters support, all of them, are solidly on the side of Trump and the congressional Republicans. A supermajority of voters support Trump's plan to cut government waste, fraud, and abuse. A supermajority of voters support his closing the borders and mass deportations. A supermajority support reciprocal tariffs and bringing manufacturing back to the country. A supermajority support keeping trans athletes out of female sports. A supermajority support declaring there are only two genders. A supermajority support his crackdown on violent crime. A supermajority support his stance on Russia and Ukraine. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And now, with the dawn of Liberation Day, it does appear that the golden age of America, which is just beginning, just got a whole lot brighter. Hey there, Turley Talker. You know what? I'd love to hear from you. That's why I'm launching the Dr. Steve Hotline, where you can call in, leave a question, and maybe even hear your own voice featured on an upcoming episode of the show. Whether it's about the latest political shakeup or cultural trends or how we keep pushing forward in this new conservative age, I want to know what's on your mind. Call me at 717-844-5984. Just leave your question. I'll be checking in every single week to answer as many as I can. Again, that's 717-844-5984. Your chance to be a part of the conversation. One more time, 717-844-5984. Give me a call and let's talk.